Sephonie is a 2022 game by Analgesic Productions. It's a game that mashes a few genres together, like it's a 3D platformer for the most part, but other times it has puzzle and visual novel sections, so the whole thing makes for an unusual yet thoughtful experience. Sephonie tells the story of three biologists, Amy Lim, Ryo Hayashi, and Ingwen Lin. Using a new technology called Onyx, the trio go on a mission to study the creatures in a remote island called Sephonie, but it all goes wrong and they end up shipwrecked. It doesn't take long for the trio to find out that Sephonie isn't an ordinary place too, so they go on to explore the island. Throughout their journey, they'll be reflecting on their lives and discovering the mystery behind Sephonie. As you explore the island, you'll get to switch between the three scientists at any time, but it's just a cosmetic thing since they all have the same abilities. All of them are equipped with an Onyx implant that aids their research and allows them to do some crazy parkour, which is necessary because the island has large areas that require a lot of platforming to get through. It took me a while to get used to the controls because the game feels like a wonky old-school platformer. There are plenty of tutorials floating around, and there are even demonstrations of how to do special moves, but even then, it took a while for the mechanics to click for me. The camera got in the way a lot, and controlling the characters felt slippery like a skating game, so it took me a while to learn how to wall run and dash properly. Like, I don't know how many times I've fallen throughout my playthrough. Thankfully, the game is filled with checkpoints, and there's even a button you can hold to respawn at the last one that you interacted with. The music's very calming too, so it helped me stay in a meditative state even when I kept messing up. Now, scattered throughout the levels are various life forms that you can link to, which then gives you info about them. They're entirely optional though, apart from some creatures that are necessary to the main story, which I'll talk more about later. Before you can get information about these creatures, you'll need to solve puzzles that play like match 3 games. Each time you clear blocks with the same colors, the meter on top fills up. You basically just need to keep playing until the meter is fully green. The puzzles in later levels add challenges, so spaces for the blocks would be limited, and objects would be thrown in the middle, but they were never difficult, to me at least. I was actually glad that it was hard to fail them, because playing through them reminded me of how much I suck at Tetris. But there came a point where I got tired of playing the minigame, specifically when I was linking with a main story creature. It took a bit too long to complete, so I switched to easy mode to make the meter fill up faster. I get why the puzzles for the main creatures were tougher though, since they're kinda like the boss fights of this game. Like, linking with them advances the story, and they give you new abilities that let you go to areas that were previously inaccessible. So apart from the Tetris-like minigames, platforming felt like puzzle solving too. The levels are like obstacle courses with different challenges, and along with optional creatures to link with, there were items to collect. Some of them are tough to get to though, so it adds to the challenge. But I think that if you're the type of person who likes this genre, then most of the platforming sections in the game will be largely intuitive. The controls come around eventually too. It was still clunky, but I noticed that I played way better towards the end of the game. I could have easily made my experience better though if I tweaked the settings, but I was way too stubborn to do that. Sephonie has a lot of accessibility options, by the way. There are so many stuff to play with, from the camera, controls, and gameplay settings. Most games I've played don't really give players this much freedom, so it was pretty cool to see. Even the game's photo mode is complex. I spent way too much time trying out different poses next to this reptile thing. But as much as I like photo mode in games, I didn't use it that much here because I'm honestly not a fan of Sephonie's visuals. I like some of the colors on character designs, but the levels look bland. It doesn't help that most of the game takes place in caverns and underground locations too. I mean, there were areas that had cool level design every now and then, but nothing really stood out to me. It's one of the reasons why I wasn't drawn to the cutscenes and visual novel portions of the game. And it doesn't help that the story had an odd presentation. It's convoluted, so it took me a while to get the idea, and even by the end of it all, I'm still scratching my head at certain plot points. The more personal parts of the story gave me a lot to think about though. Like the three scientists are all of Taiwanese descent, but they all had different circumstances growing up. Amy's from the US, Rio's from Japan, and Ingwen is from Taiwan. All of them have led completely different lives too, so as they get to know each other on Sephonie, the game shows bits of their personal stories and thoughts. Without spoiling anything, it goes through some pretty deep stuff, from spiritualism to relationships, personal struggles, cultural differences, identity, privilege, guilt, and so much more. And despite each character having led completely different lives, I empathize with some of their thoughts. It was weird because some of the topics were way too specific, so it was like seeing things that I've only ever thought of. But then I played this game and suddenly I'm reading similar thoughts being articulated right in front of me. So yeah, that was interesting. And even though the story was hard to follow and it went on for a little too long, it still gave me existential dread from time to time. Overall, it took me more than 6 hours to beat Sephonie, but I think it's a really hard game to recommend. If you're not open to experimental games, I'm not sure it'll be easy to get into, especially since the gameplay is wonky. But sprinkled between the platforms and puzzles is a surreal sci-fi story that feels deeply personal. I don't know how other people will feel about it, but for me, it's a game that's going to be in my mind for a while. Let me know what you thought about the video. Playing this made me curious about the dev's other game actually, Anodyne 2, so I'm probably going to look it up sometime. But yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.